And I still believe he's not going to coach a game. Like I told you earlier, I have not believed he was going to coach a game ever since he was introduced as UNC's head coach.
They listening, D.A. Yeah. Everything he's saying, D.A.
What's good, everybody? What's up, everybody? We'd like to welcome you to the Q&A party. Be good and be good to one another. Get comfortable, sit down and enjoy the show with your lover. Feeling good, doing well, that's the vibe that we bring. From your mic to your mind, from Cal to the main. Q&A, Q&A, Q&A. Relax and press play.
Let's dig into the future of Bill Belichick, Jordon Hudson, and this UNC job next. But before we get there, 2 housekeeping items. Number 1, if you like these long-form Q&A conversations, they can be listened to as a podcast if you'd like. But remember to subscribe to the channel. Click on this button below me. That way, you are notified each and every time we have one of these Q&As, which happen each and every week. Also, if you like this conversation, there is always going to be a raw feed members-only video that I tape after the chats. And that's just me mulching through, analyzing what we just talked about to a deeper level and giving some of my thoughts on that. To get that members-only raw feed video series, make sure you click on the join button above me right next to subscribe. Or if that doesn't work, just copy and paste the URL in either this video description or the YouTube channel description. And to get personal live chats and discounts on all merchandise for this channel. My guest today is Demitri Ravanos. Demitri has a long career in radio in both Alabama and the Carolinas. He's been a podcast host in the Carolinas as well, and the creator of the Sports Podcast Festival in Raleigh, North Carolina, coming up this summer. Demitri is also a features writer and columnist for Barrett Media. So Demitri has a keen eye on assessing the industry. We have this collision between a normally media-averse head coach and a sensationalistic media tabloid circus going on around everything within his relationship. And he's based in North Carolina, so he knows what's going on at UNC. Here's Demitri Ravanos. DR, how we doing?
I'm good, DA. I like this, DR, DA. I don't know why I've never put it together in my head before.
It's pretty good. It works out well.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's start with the local response to Bill, because you're based in the Carolinas. I want to know how North Carolina fans feel about this, because you could tell me they're all on board. They think everything else is just noise. They're hunkered in and going, yes, we got a legend on the sideline. Mm-hmm. Or you could tell me they're so over it already. This has become a sideshow and they're tired. They don't want any of this. And I would believe either one. So which one is it?
So honestly, DA, it's both, because I think there's a real generational divide here. There are people that certainly on the younger end know that when it comes to college sports, regardless of what the culture is here in the Tar Heel State, football drives the bus. And the future of North Carolina, as the ACC's ground gets shakier and shakier underneath it, is going to depend largely on having a decent football product that they can sell as well. Now, unfortunately, the people with the money don't really care about football. It is a distraction until we get to basketball season. And so for those people, Bill Belichick is something to brag about. It's a nice thing to say that they have that Duke doesn't, especially as Duke football ascends and UNC football starts to decline a little bit. So I think there's a real divide, and that is just the jumping off point. I would tell you that for the most part, everybody here is very much over the fact that we have TMZ camped out in our town now all the time. I think every day the people that I hear say, just wait till he gets on the field, wait till this team gets on the field with Belichick coaching, get smaller and smaller and smaller. I'm not from here originally. I have no deep-seated love or hate for any of the 3 ACC teams in the Triangle. So I get it from all sides whenever I write about Bill Belichick. And I have noticed each week the defenders of the Carolina brand get quieter and quieter about my criticisms.
Do you think that's because there's a fatigue from the headlines, or do you think there is a truth to the stuff that Pablo Torre has reported, the things that other outlets have reported, that Jordon Hudson internally in Chapel Hill has become a problem, and maybe people that are in Chapel Hill are recognizing that because they have firsthand experience or secondhand knowledge of that?
Yeah, so I think one thing that Pablo not being on the ground here probably doesn't readily know. I'm sure it has been told to him. And this is really important. UNC did not go to Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick came to UNC looking for a job, and that is how all of this got started. I think that what you are seeing happening right now, and Pablo Torre even said this on a local podcast here, that he regrets using the word ban, that Jordon Hudson was banned from the facility. Certainly there are people that don't want her around the facility and are working hard to make sure that happens, but there is no formal ban. What that tells me is there's a real divide within the athletic facility, the board of trustees, maybe even the president's office at UNC. There are enough people, though, that want this sideshow over that they are going to people like Pablo Torre. They're going to people like Joe Ovius and Joe Giglio, my colleagues here locally, and making sure they know just how kind of absurd this has gotten. One thing that I've said a lot about Jordon Hudson that I think needs to be noted is she's not dumb, right? I think you look at those emails from the FOIA request and you see somebody that does have an understanding of marketing, but what you also see is someone who's 24, who doesn't get that. Yeah, you can brand Steve Belichick as not a nepotism hire all you want. You can't change what I see with my own eyes, right? You can't change the institutional knowledge I have from years of following football, from years of covering UNC, and change my mind about this. I think she believes she is capable of being more effective than she is, and because this school just does not know how to behave like a football school, before they realized they had to stop this train, it was already out of control.
So you bring up the fact that Bill went to UNC because it would suggest that the Jordon Hudson thing or the TMZ dynamic is immediately not what we signed up for. Is that what you're pointing out?
Yeah. Not only is it not what we signed up for, but it is not even something that UNC could fathom was going to be on the table, right? When we first heard Bill went to UNC asking about a job, I'll be totally honest with you, DA. From the day he got fired, I've been saying this is a hustle. He's not going to coach a game. But I thought it was setting up a situation where the only thing that made sense to do when his buyout drops is to hand the program over to Steve and give Steve Belichick his first head coaching job. I did not have the girlfriend blowing this up for him and burning all of these bridges on my bingo card.
It's, I think, very instructive that two separate voices that are clearly part of the Bill Belichick inner circle have voiced displeasure with the current situation, because Bill has been so good for so long of keeping everything in-house. That's what the Patriots did. But when Julian Edelman went on his podcast and dismissed that Jordon Hudson had inserted herself unreasonably in that CBS Sunday Morning interview, is when one of the Belichick son's wives, so one of his daughter-in-laws, Bill's daughter-in-laws, had commented criticizing how she handled herself. And you're like, oh, that's within the family walls. There's some disagreement there. And then when Julian Edelman backtracked with Cowherd and said, you know what, this has become a distraction, you have to limit distractions, he had done a full 180. I don't think that 180 happens unless internally there's some discussion amongst the inner sanctum that Jordon has now become a problem, or Bill and Jordon are not good, and this has become untenable. Those two things suggested to me, okay, it's not just the outside world viewing it this way. Internally, his inner circle is also viewing it as a real problem right now.
Look, let's be real. It's embarrassing for that inner circle to a certain extent. I think, DA, if you were talking to Bill Belichick today instead of Demitri Ravanos, the tag underneath his picture, he would insist it not say 6-time Super Bowl champion. He would insist it says dating a 24-year-old. He has seemingly come to define himself by this relationship, by this woman. In a way that, you talk about how much this guy was defined by no distractions and defined by the job is the job. And, we're not going to do the silly accoutrement, but he didn't make dumb mistakes. And at UNC, we're seeing him make a lot of dumb mistakes. You mentioned the CBS Sunday Morning interview. Remind me, DA, what school sweatshirt was he wearing on that interview?
It's remarkable.
Right. He was wearing a Navy sweatshirt. And I can tell you from talking to people not on the Board of Trustees, just money people at Carolina, they were furious, more furious about that than they were about Jordon Hudson's involvement. While we are going through all of this and the debate about Jordon is very much out there in the public, you have Mike Lombardi go on the ACC network and say that he knows that Carolina blue is a soft color, but we're going to toughen them up, as if the University of North Carolina didn't choose that color and ended up with it on total accident. There is a joke here that Tar Heel fans love to tell, that God is a Tar Heel fan because he painted the sky Carolina blue. These are things that they are very, very proud of, that are just unforced errors that Patriots Bill Belichick was not making. I don't think that is a one-for-one tie to Jordon Hudson, but Jordon Hudson is one of those unforced errors he's making right now.
And he's caught in a weird in-between. What he was for 70 years of his life and 50 years of his coaching career was all football, all focus, distance yourself from pop culture and that thing, right? The dynamic that we all sink our teeth into. He was above the fray. I'm not going to be that guy that's beneath me. And now he's doing an interview for a book he's trying to peddle, which was never his bit.
Right.
But he's doing so really at the behest of her, I think. I think she's going, okay, let's soften your look, okay? But he's still caught in that, yeah, but I'm not wearing UNC stuff. I'm wearing a Navy sweatshirt, and it's going to be ripped. That's what I do. And then on top of it, Bill being all football all the time, now he's trying to be a kinder, gentler Bill, seemingly. He's kind of smiling through gritted teeth at questions, even though internally he hates every bit of it. He's showing up to more events. So she's got him trying. She thinks he's got to change his demeanor a little bit. And at his soul, at his core, he's incredibly uncomfortable doing those types of things.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you saw the video that ESPN put out today, the interview at the ACC meetings happening down in Amelia Island, Florida. It was him and Dabo Swinney. And boy, Reese Davis, who I have a ton of respect for, this is not a commentary on Reese's professionalism or talent at all. But boy, ESPN is doing more to rehab the Tar Heel football brand's image than Belichick seems interested in doing right now. I mean, they were lobbing him softballs, and Belichick was, played it close to the vest, maybe 2-sentence answers. And it's so interesting to me because last year we saw the version of Bill Belichick that he should be right now. He was really good on Inside the NFL with Pat McAfee, on the Manning cast. And, it's something I wrote about for Barrett Media. I don't get why these guys go back to coaching when broadcasting, when you are a name of that level and you can make that kind of money. I mean, it's a pretty damn good life.
It's an incredible life. And you pointed out in that piece, I'm glad you brought it up, which is why I wanted to have you on, that the template is Bill Cowher. Bill Cowher left on top. He was just a year removed from winning a Super Bowl. For 20 years, at least 10 to 15, he got constant coaching overtures. He was able to decline each one of them. If one came along that he really loved, maybe he would have left. He never did. And he makes good cash. You pointed out that Bill's probably making about $10 million at UNC. That's probably pretty close to what Cowher has made, at least at his peak, what Gruden had made for Monday Night Football, etc. But I guess at the end of the day, it's the ego of I can still coach and win.
As good as the Pixar canon of films are, I think the truest line in any Pixar film is when the pelican tells Nemo that he probably tried to eat him at one point because fish got to swim and birds got to eat. And look, to a certain extent, coaches got to coach, right? But Cowher is really interesting to me because of the local connection. I mean, I don't know if you know DA, but he played at NC State. He had a home near a country club in Cary, a suburb of Raleigh here. For the most part, over those 10 to 15 years, that team that came calling was the Carolina Panthers. It was also NC State at one point. And Bill Cowher's not leaving a broadcast job for a middling ACC program. But you know what he did do? He did agree to be a part of the search committee for NC State when they found Dave Dorn. And it kept him close to football. It kept him involved with X and O football in a way that he didn't have to give up what it was that he had, that he was working on. I mean, I point out a lot of people in that piece. To me, the greatest fumble of this ever will always be Urban Meyer. Now, keep in mind, as a guy that graduated from the University of Alabama, I do have a very particular hatred of Urban Meyer. But Urban Meyer, the college football coach, Urban Meyer, the broadcaster, great at what they do and what they were doing in 2019. Urban Meyer, the NFL head coach, maybe is the worst NFL head coach I've ever seen because he was so openly disdainful about the job. And boy, does that look familiar to what's going on at Chapel Hill right now. 6 Super Bowls certainly carries a different weight than any number of national championships ever could. But I think if Bill Belichick were to wake up tomorrow, DA, and say, you know, maybe I look at my BFF, Nick Saban, and he seems to have it all figured out. Maybe that's what I should do too. At this point, I think he'd have to go away for a year or two completely before he is not a damaged product in the eyes of broadcasters.
Your Urban Meyer comp is perfect because it's the perfect inverse.
Yeah,
and it is incredible success at a different level of the sport, walking into the other side of the hallway with complete arrogance, like I know exactly what I can do here, not understanding that it is completely different. Urban Meyer went into the pros and really was not invested at all in the outcome. This is why he stays back and hangs out at his bar after a loss. And I think the same thing's going to be with Bill. I do not think if they lose to Wake Forest on a Saturday afternoon in double OT, he's going to be pouring over that. I think he's going to be like, yeah, you know what? I've got 6 rings. I don't need to worry about this.
I mean, he is at the right place for that to happen. Now, I will say, go look at UNC's football schedule this year. If they don't get to 8 wins, something went terribly wrong. That is a joke of a schedule. That being said, if they do not get to 8 wins, most people that don't follow college football don't know the whole behind-the-scenes saga. And I'm not talking about the Jordon Hudson stuff. I'm talking about the power struggle that led to Bill getting hired. Most of those people will say, well, how could Bill do what he did in the pros? It's UNC football. And they'd be very fair in saying that. But, you know, it's a major benefit of the doubt that I don't think we should be giving the guy who is supposed to be the greatest football mind ever, in my opinion, second to Nick Saban. But the guy who is supposed to be the greatest football mind ever in a second-tier conference in a situation that he kind of created for himself.
And there are few examples of anybody going from the NFL to college and it working or vice versa. I mean, we're littered with examples of it flaming out for legends like Bill Walsh, like Urban Meyer, like Steve Spurrier. I mean, go down the list. Where are the guys that it worked on both fronts?
I mean, you have to use your imagination, right? Like, I think that Saban, had he had another 2 or 3 years, could have gotten the Dolphins to being a playoff team. But is that, I mean, that's not what you would consider on par with what he did in college football. They're 2 totally different games. You know, maybe the X and O stuff is largely the same, but there is a very different reality to being a college football head coach. They only made one Deion Sanders. Until I see somebody else that can do the job without going and meeting kids' parents in their homes or meeting kids' high school coaches at their gyms, I don't think it's a model that can be replicated. Deion is one of one. The Colorado situation was a one of one. I think that is what UNC envisioned they could get. And let's be honest, Bill Belichick has more hardware than Deion, but when you are in that role, it's all about charisma. And Bill Belichick's brand is zero charisma.
And I think when we go back to Bill Cowher, what you recognize is that Bill Cowher is a man of pretty high integrity that made people feel good about themselves. And was really comfortable in who he was grounded and authentic in who he was. So he was never playing a role. What you saw on the sideline was what he was. It feels to me like the unraveling of Bill is because here's a guy that's actually pretty insecure, domineering as a coach, but really frayed relationships everywhere that he's ever been. He's at war still with Bob Kraft. That much was obvious, and how he was not going to talk about it in the book and at the CBS interview. In the NFL, nobody wants to do a favor for him. There's an entire league that could use a great head coach, and nobody even wants to bring him on as an advisor, as anything. You have owners that are trying to stab him in the back, basically. And in college, we're watching the media laugh and his enemies laugh because he turned his back on everybody, and he's dating somebody 50 years younger, which also calls into question, how comfortable are you in your own skin? And you brought up the point, he'd rather have you reminded he's dating somebody 24 than all of his football accomplishments. All of that, to me, paints a picture of a guy that is so opposite Bill Cowher, and why Cowher can be successful a lot of different places, and Bill has only been successful as the head coach of the New England Patriots with Tom Brady, and as an assistant coach where he didn't have to be the face of things.
Before you started working with Babs on SiriusXM, have you had a partner before where it was Damon and blank or blank and Damon?
No.
Okay. I think there is something, you talk about the insecurity of Bill Belichick. I think both Bill and Tom Brady believed when they split up, well, he's not going to succeed without me, or I'm the one that's going to be okay on my own. Tom Brady walked into an historically inept franchise and turned them into a Super Bowl winner in year one. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Jordon Hudson, understanding the basics of marketing, but can't change what I've seen with my own two eyes, right? She can urge him to write this book and do a publicity tour to remind people what he was at his best. D.A., you and I are football fans. We saw the last 3 years of his career. We saw the last three rosters he put together in New England. There is a reason that the NFL is not making phone calls for him anymore. And she can wear her, Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl championship sweatshirt at the Super Bowl all she wants. And that's great. It's fun. It's a funny moment. But, that was a different Bill Belichick. That was a Bill Belichick. I truly believe not only Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl in Tampa, but Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl in Tampa, and literally the next year, things plummet so far that Bill Belichick cannot get it back. I think it broke him. I think it broke him in the way you are talking about, that he really doesn't know how to identify himself anymore. And I think, I have been in that situation where back when I was in rock radio, my partner and I got fired, and both of us talked openly about we're going to try and keep this thing together as long as we can, because both of us believed if we went off on our own, I would be okay and he wouldn't. Well, as soon as we went off on our own, he got a job in Boston, and I've been trying to piece together a career ever since then. I still love the guy, but I do feel a little bitterness about it. I don't like to think about our time together because it makes me a little bit sad. I would not be surprised if Bill goes through that a little bit. Fortunately, I've got young kids. I've got teenagers. I've got a wife. I've started this new business. I found a home in writing. I found all these other ways that no longer force me to define myself by that situation. For Bill, football is football. And I don't think he knows how to think about football other than this is the sport and this is the best level I can get to, rather than think about, okay, Tom got his Super Bowl in Tampa. Tom is the top broadcaster in the NFL right now. Yes, football is football, but this is a whole new world. This is a whole new challenge, and I've got to approach it a whole new way. He's just not capable of that.
So was your company, you asked me had I had a partner before, whether I looked at my previous partner and wanted to succeed in spite of him?
My question was going to be, if you had, do you think that person looks at your career and resents you every single day?
I think it's only natural that if you had partners in previous stops, you just always compare yourself to that other person's success.
Yeah, and
no
look, to show the audience, like, I don't resent my old partner. There's a cartoon droid of the two of us that still hangs on my on my office wall. But it's hard not to think about it. It's hard sometimes not to feel like, why him and not me, right? And I think that when you define yourself a certain way together, and you split up and the other guy gets to keep doing that, in this case, that is winning. I can't imagine that Bill Belichick has ever thought, why him and not me, or has ever not thought, why him and not me, what he thinks about Tom Brady.
Excellent insight. Excellent. Yes. Personality studies. And that's what this whole thing is with Bill. He's been so closed off forever. We never knew anything about him. Just the little granular parts. And here he is, and everything is spilled on the table, all this embarrassing information, and he's handling it so poorly, and everything's become tabloid fodder. And it's like, oh my God, when you start looking under the hood, Bill's existence is really turbulent. And we mentioned this earlier. It is very clear his family is unhappy with what's going on. He is not getting internal support within his family for this situation.
Yeah, it's crazy. The thing that I still believe he's not going to coach a game. Like I told you earlier, I have not believed he was going to coach a game ever since he was introduced as UNC's head coach. But what I find really interesting is Steve Belichick proved at Washington last year he's a competent defensive coordinator. Like, Washington was bad, but their defense wasn't the problem, particularly the secondary. There was a path for Steve Belichick to become a college football head coach eventually. He tried to hit fast forward, and now I wonder if UNC cuts ties, if it's going to be cut ties with the entire Belichick family. My colleague Joe Giglio has been hitting a wall in FOIA requests trying to get a copy of Steve's contract. He asked Bubba Cunningham, who is the athletic director at UNC, if it is in Bill Belichick's contract that Steve is the coach in waiting. And Bubba said there is no language about that in Bill's contract. And it was only the next day that it dawned on Giglio, I should have asked about Steve's contract. Well, that gave UNC time to make sure they don't let that get out in a FOIA request. I don't see how this ends with Bill on the sideline for week one. I think is it the Friday night game or the Sunday night game when they play TCU? I just don't see how they let that happen.
So you don't think he coaches a game at Chapel Hill?
No. I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, I thought this was a setup to where he was going to retire, and the only logical move for UNC would be to give Steve Belichick the job. He gets a very favorable schedule. With UNC, listen, this is NC State, not UNC, but to give you an idea of the college football environment in the Triangle. The Phillip Rivers team at NC State that won 10 games got a parade thrown for them, and they went to the Gator Bowl, right? Like, I mean, very different from Alabama, where I went to school. Like that, the Gator Bowl, you get fired. It would be really hard not to get to 8 wins, and around here, 8 wins would be something that would make an athletic department say, we should invest in this guy. I thought that was the plan all along.
Well, it does strike me that part of this is just to make Saturdays relevant. I mean, you kind of pointed this out, like, just get us to basketball season. I know when I worked in Kansas City, both Mizzou and Kansas as athletic programs were kind of like this. Just don't embarrass us in the fall so we can get to basketball season, specifically at Kansas. Yeah. And it does strike me that, if you give me 9-3, 8-4, that means that there's a couple of Saturdays in October that I can feel good about going out to watch a game if I'm alumni, if I'm a booster, etc. And then whenever Midnight Madness is for college hoops, I'm all in. So 8-4, 9-3 at UNC is a wild success probably, as long as it's not a punchline to get to 9-3.
Right. I mean, and look, there are teams on that schedule that when I first saw it, like before they had a head coach, I first saw it last year, looked like, oh, well, there's a loss. Like, UCF. I mean, UCF rehired Scott Frost. I don't believe in UCF, right? Like, it's gonna be really hard to envision UNC not being multiple games above 500. I've seen it in the past where that happens. Like Larry Fedora had a year where he ran into the first buzzsaw Clemson team in the ACC championship game. But, he got that team to the ACC championship game. And the problem is, as the stakes get higher later in the season, dude, Tar Heel fans are already ready to go across campus to the Dean Dome. It's just the nature here. It makes no sense to me, but, I've lived here for 20 years now. I know it's the truth with that fan base.
So this was great. I encourage anybody to go to Barrett Sports Media or barrettmedia.com and look up Dimitri's piece on what Bill should do. And you're adamant. Get out of the football business. Get into the broadcast business. You'll have a nice, long career doing that. You can do that until you don't want to do it anymore. Jimmy Johnson's in his 80s. These guys, they can hang on forever. He would have another 6, 7, 8 years of doing this. Hell, if he wanted to be Corso, he'd have even longer than that.
Agreed. This is why I say, God, you've got to go away for a year, because he seemed sharp last year, right? He's 72, 73. It's not like he's in mental decline, but now everybody's questioning that. So I think he's got to go away for a year, delete the social media, don't post any, photos of you and Jordan on the sailboat while you're gone, and get the media back enamored with the mystique of Bill Belichick. I mean, he is a interesting, mysterious character. Like when they were kind of running parallel when Saban was dominating college and Bill was dominating the NFL. Like Saban would shout at you what he thought about things. Bill always played it close to the vest, and that gave him a very different persona that I thought last year was very advantageous for letting him set up the broadcast career he wanted. I don't work full-time for anybody. I dabble with Inside the NFL. I dabble with the Manning Cast. I dabble with Pat McAfee. Right now, two of those things, the Manning Cast, Pat McAfee, they're too chaotic of environments that set him up to be the butt of the joke forever and ever. You got to go away for a year.
And somebody, maybe his new PR team, has to tell him no more yoga photos on the beach. That can only hurt.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Remember, you're an old man. You have these to worry about.
Demitri Ravanos joining us here on the show, talking about this piece. Barrett Sports Media, Barrett Media. Go check it out. Demitri did a great job writing this piece. Dude, always great to catch up, man. This was fantastic. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Can I plug the Sports Podcast Festival real quick?
Please.
August 23rd, it's the second year we're doing it. We're starting this new tradition where week 0 of the college football season, if you are not going to Ireland, the party is in Raleigh. Split Zone Duo, Ovius and Giglio, and Big Screen Sports. All 3 shows together on one stage. August 23rd happens to be my birthday. It would mean the world to me if you came down to Raleigh to join us.
Okay, Saturday, August 23rd in Raleigh?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I'll put it on the calendar. We'll see if we can make that thing happen, man.
DA, my wife's a doctor. We have a big house. You can come stay in one of the many guest rooms.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah.
Wow, personal invite. Hard to turn down. I like it. Man, a weekend with Carolina barbecue, not too bad.
Not bad.
Week 0, college football, always fun as well. All right, I'll try to work on that, buddy. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, DA.
Thanks for watching, everybody. A reminder, subscribe to the channel. Click on this button below me or above me to subscribe and get notified when we do new Q&A long-form conversations. And if you liked what you just heard and stayed to the end, you might want to deep dive into it, become a member of the channel by either clicking on join above me or putting that URL in either the video description or the channel description into your browser, and you can join there for the raw feed, my unedited, unpolished take on what we just talked about here with Belichick, UNC, and Jordon Hudson. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm DA. We'll see you next time.